Some books teach you things, and others are just plain entertaining. But every once in a while, you find a book that can actually change you from the inside out. Today, we're diving into one of those books, and we're going to look at how its stories have a wild history of reshaping lives by challenging people, confronting them, and guiding them towards some pretty profound change. So that really brings us to the big question, right? Can a collection of ancient stories, really ancient, actually change who you are today? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into that exact idea by looking at some of the most powerful stories of personal transformation ever told. All right, let's jump right in with our first case study, the story of a guy named David. This is a man who goes from being a complete nobody, totally overlooked out in the fields, to becoming a legendary, but also deeply, deeply flawed king. When we first meet David, he's just the youngest brother, a simple shepherd boy. He's so insignificant that when the prophet Samuel shows up to anoint the next king, David's own dad doesn't even bother calling him in from the fields. Yeah, he was completely overlooked by men, but he was chosen by God. And this is where it gets really interesting, because David's life is just full of these stark contrasts. On one side, you've got David the shepherd, this kid who takes down a giant with nothing but a sling and a whole lot of faith. But on the other side, you've got David the king, a powerful man who makes some huge, sinful mistakes with Bathsheba and Uriah. His whole life was this constant tug-of-war between his divine purpose and his very human weakness. And the real insight here is that his flaws, they weren't just bumps in the road. They were actually essential to his transformation. And that quote just nails it, doesn't it? Real change for David wasn't about him becoming perfect. No way. It was all about how he dealt with his imperfections. It was his willingness to really wrestle with his failings, to be publicly broken by them, and to actually seek forgiveness. That's what truly shaped him. His biggest sin led to some of his most profound psalms, and it transformed his kingship from one of just raw power to one of deep, relatable humility. Okay, so this whole theme of being changed through tough times, it gets even more intense with our next story. This one is about a man named Job who literally had everything you could possibly want, only to lose it all in a series of just catastrophic events that would test the absolute limits of his faith. So to really get Job's story, you've got to understand this idea of a crucible. Think of it like a super intense trial, one so painful it forces you to change. Job's suffering wasn't for nothing. It was a crucible. It was meant to burn away his old ideas about God and forge something brand new, even if the process itself was just excruciating. And wow, the trials he faced were just unimaginable. He lost his children, all of them. He lost all his wealth, his health, and then, to top it all off, even his friends turned on him, basically telling him he must have done something awful to deserve it. Job questioned God, he cried out in total despair, but, and this is so important, he never stopped being honest. His transformation wasn't about getting his stuff back. It was about his faith completely shifting from a transactional one, I'm good so God blesses me, to a relational one, where he trusted God even when he had zero answers. Our next story is about the Apostle Peter, and honestly, he might be one of the most relatable examples of how our biggest, most embarrassing failures can actually become the foundation for our greatest strengths. Just look at this. Peter's journey is a complete 180. He starts out as this impulsive, kind of flawed fisherman, and at his absolute lowest point, paralyzed by fear, he denies even knowing Jesus. But that same guy, he becomes this courageous leader, a pillar of the early church who stands up and boldly proclaims his faith to thousands of people. His failure wasn't the end of his story. It was the very thing that broke his self-reliance and allowed him to be rebuilt into someone so much stronger. And that number, 3, it's so crucial. After denying Jesus 3 times out of sheer terror, Peter's story could have just ended right there in shame. But it didn't. His repentance and his restoration show us that failure is never the final word. In fact, for Peter, it was what he needed. It was the prerequisite for a deeper, more courageous faith, one that wasn't built on his own strength, but on forgiveness. So this pattern of transformation, this idea of faith being forged through trial and trust, it's not just in a few stories. It's this recurring theme that you see in so many other key figures all throughout the Bible. Abraham's life lays this out perfectly. First, he gets this promise that seems absolutely impossible. He's gonna be the father of a great nation, even though he's an old man. He didn't just blindly accept it. He wrestled with doubt for decades. But when he was faced with the ultimate test of obedience, his trust held firm and he became the foundation for generations to come. And we see this powerful pattern everywhere. Think about Ruth. She's a foreigner in a foreign land with a totally uncertain future. She chooses loyalty to her new family and their God over the comfort of going back home. And that radical choice, it puts her right in the lineage of kings. And then there's Queen Esther, who literally risked being executed to go before the king and save her people. Her transformation from a quiet queen to a bold advocate shows how a single moment of courage can change the course of history. So after looking at all these incredible lives, what's the big takeaway here? Well, a really clear and consistent pattern of transformation starts to pop out. And it's not magic, it's a process. See, here's the thing. The Bible doesn't give us these perfect heroes on shiny pedestals. Not at all. It gives us real, messy, imperfect people. People whose faith was forged in struggle, whose honesty was discovered through doubt, whose character was shaped through really difficult obedience, and whose greatest courage was born from repentance right after their worst failures. And that leaves us with one final thought. The power of these stories isn't just about what they did for people thousands of years ago. The real question is, if engaging with this book could so radically transform them, what could it reveal, or challenge, or maybe even transform in you?